The Israeli military says it has killed a senior Hezbollah commander in a strike on Beirut on Monday night.
Florida braces itself as Hurricane Milton turned into a Category 5 storm. The European Space Agency launched a mission to survey the asteroid NASA purposely crashed into 2 years ago.
The Israeli military said it has killed Suhail Husseini, the commander of Hezbollah's headquarters, in an attack on Beirut on Monday night. It said Husseini was responsible for transferring weapons from Iran and distributing the arms to Hezbollah's various units. Further strikes were also reported in Beirut and across eastern and southern Lebanon on Tuesday morning. Israel also said it would soon launch operations on Lebanon's southern coast, telling residents to stay off the beaches and the sea along the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, at least 21 people, including 5 children and 2 women, were killed in strikes that hit houses in the Bureij refugee camp in central Gaza, according to Al-Aqsa Hospital, where the bodies were taken. The hospital also received about a dozen injured, including several children. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to continue fighting the country's enemies during a government memorial service marking the 7 October Hamas attacks.
ה-7 באוקטובר יסמל לדורות את מחיר תקומתנו, והוא יבטא לדורות את גודל נחישותנו ואת עוצמת רוחנו.
The latest strikes add to the mounting Palestinian death toll in Gaza, which is now nearing 42,000, according to Gaza's health ministry.
1 year after the October 7 attack, which resulted in 1,200 people killed and 251 taken hostage, Israel's army chief has said that it has defeated the military wing of Hamas and continued to combat its terrorist capabilities. However, this claim about the Palestinian movement is not shared by analysts Euronews spoke to.
So if, say, for example, we think it's lost 6,000 fighters, it also seems to be recruiting, or I should say, mobilizing about 6,000 members of its reserves, who are certainly not as well trained as the initial batch, but probably still able to hold a gun and fire rocket launchers at Israeli tanks. I think we can safely say that Hamas has been working to restore some of its damaged tunnels.
A recent major blow to Hamas was the assassination of exiled political leader Ismail Haniyeh on July 31st while he was visiting Iran. Hamas then chose Yahya Sinwar, who masterminded the October 7 attacks, as his successor.
Decisions are taken by consensus in the Shura Council. Of course, Yahya Sinwar would have a strong voice because of what happened on October 7th and the way he is regarded within Hamas and maybe outside Hamas as a strong leader. And because he has Israeli hostages, that gives him a strong card.
Sinwar is seen as a hardliner. The US and the EU consider Hamas a terrorist group, but the movement remains crucial to negotiating a ceasefire. Some Western countries could play a bigger mediating role, our analyst suggests.
Countries like Norway, Switzerland can have talks with Hamas because they do not give them the political label of a terrorist organization. It's a political decision. And so the absence of channels, direct channels, is a problem because Hamas is, of course, a movement that fights the military occupation with violence.
For a political solution of the conflict, the Palestinian Authority remains the main interlocutor. But even if Hamas is unlikely to govern Gaza, as it has done since 2007, analysts suggest it will still need to be included somehow.
Let's be clear, Hamas is going nowhere, even having suffered as it has. It will always be able to, at the very least, oppose any outside intervention in Gaza, whether that is an Israeli intervention, as it is doing at the moment, or whether that is the intervention of the Palestinian Authority in the future, or an international force.
According to sources close to him, new Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has no regrets over the October 7 attacks and wants to create a Palestinian state by armed struggle.
Opposition supporters in Albania violently clashed with police during a protest, demanding their government be replaced by a caretaker cabinet before next year's parliamentary election. The Conservative opposition have in the past accused Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama's socialists of corruption, voter manipulation and usurping powers of the country's judiciary. They have staged sometimes violent protests against the government since 2013. After a colleague was convicted of slander and imprisoned in a case they consider politically motivated, the Democratic Party of former Prime Minister Sali Berisha has been holding protests outside the Albanian parliament for the last week. Both the US and European Union have urged opposition to resume dialogue with the government, saying that violence won't help the country integrate with the 27-nation EU bloc. Later this month, Tirana will start discussion with the EU on how the country aligns with the bloc's stances on rule of law, democratic institutions and the fight against corruption.
Cocoa is one of the key products affected by European regulations to combat deforestation worldwide. With its famous chocolate, Belgium is a key player in the cocoa industry, which is why Vollers, a company based in the port of Antwerp, welcomes the European Commission's proposal to postpone implementation of the legislation by 1 year.
For us, it is important to know what kind of combinations there will be, how parcels will be entering into Europe, and what the certification platform will be. Where can we find the information? Who will give us the information? Certainly, as a warehouse keeper, that is important. On which document do we need to set the information? Are we going to put it on the customs clearances, yes or no? So that was quite important.
According to the regulation, cocoa imports will require proof of the origin of the beans, introducing a number of additional administrative tasks. The Commission is suggesting that a further 12 months be given to clarify these procedures at the risk of delaying efforts to preserve the forests. The aim of the regulation is to provide a framework for the entry into the EU market of products that contribute to the deforestation and forest degradation on a global scale. The text mainly targets cocoa, coffee, soy, palm oil and timber. For environmental NGOs, the proposed delay is a mistake.
The EU is a significant driver of deforestation worldwide. We say that the EU is the second biggest importer of deforestation in the world, only after China, which has a much bigger population. Now that doesn't mean that the EU is going overseas and cutting down forests. What it means is that a lot of the products that we import and consume in the European Union are produced at the cost of forests worldwide, both inside Europe and outside Europe.
Regulation can make a real difference here, say the NGOs. After all, the EU is said to be responsible for the deforestation of more than 284,000 hectares a year, an area almost the size of Luxembourg.
Florida braces itself as Hurricane Milton turned into a Category 5 storm as it approaches the Tampa Bay region. It comes less than 2 weeks after the catastrophic Hurricane Helene hit the area, killing more than 230 people.
Came out here today, we got hit with the last storm, we got flooded, so it's all about prepping this time. So we're getting the sandbags ready to put around the house to prevent what happened last week.
For a second time in just a few weeks, residents have been ordered to evacuate.
Please listen to evacuation orders. Please listen to your local officials, because I know a lot of folks out there have survived these hurricanes before. This one is going to be very, very serious.
The storm surge could rise between 2.4 and 3.6 meters, the highest predicted in the region, and almost double the levels reached during Storm Helene.
2, 1.
The European Space Agency's latest mission, Hera, could tell us how to prevent an asteroid from colliding with Earth. The spacecraft is on its way to survey the harmless asteroid that NASA purposely crashed into 2 years ago.
With Hera, we're actually setting up insurance, a life insurance for planet Earth, right? We are not only demonstrating we can deflect an asteroid, but we also validating this technique so that we can use it for other asteroids.
The 4-year-long project drew together 18 countries in Europe and 17 companies across the continent.
It's the first planetary defense mission, but it's also so far the fastest planetary mission that has been done in Europe. So it shows also that things can be done on a quick path, which is especially necessary if we will have to deflect an asteroid one day.
As well as inspecting the DART crash site for the first time, Hera will gather information on how asteroids like Dimorphos are formed.
We are tackling a problem, a natural hazard that we can not only detect, but we can also prevent. And I think we're sending a very strong signal to humanity dealing with a hazard that could be extremely remote, but if it happens, the consequences are absolutely global.
Overcoming obstacles like the weather and the recent grounding of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, Hera will now embark on its 195 million kilometer journey on a mission that could one day see Earth overcome the possibility of extinction. David Walsh, Euronews in Cape Canaveral.